Hey everyone, welcome back to SharePoint TV. I am here with the one, the only, Dan Holme.
And I'm Dan Holme, and I am here with the one and only Bill Baer, who, by the way, I have to thank for almost my whole career right now. So I've never had a chance to publicly thank you for it, but...
now you're going to make me blush, and I'm going to go cry in a corner and leave.
So here's to Bill.
Thank you, Dan. We've got a exciting almost 30 minutes with you, or whenever you need to leave. We know you're exceptionally busy, and I've seen you in passing probably 500 times this week. But one of the most important things that we wanted to bring you in here for is, for those that have followed the conference handle on Twitter or even our SharePoint handle, everybody by now knows that you were instrumental in making that epic keynote a success. So for that and that alone, everybody in the community as well as everybody here thanks you. But the one thing I wanted to bring up around the keynote itself is if someone were to watch the keynote, because it's available on demand for you to be able to view on our SharePoint Virtual Summit page, our SharePoint Conference web page, and other places throughout social media. We have the links in the chat from previous discussions. But what is the one thing that you would say people could take away from all of the news that we had in that keynote yesterday?
Yeah, I think there are obviously a lot of great announcements, and I think we'll get to those, but I think the overall message is that Microsoft 365 and the world-class applications that it includes, so that's SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, Stream, Teams, Outlook, they're all coming together in really interesting ways. Yeah. Where, when you and I started our journey together, we had all these siloed server products. We did. And now not only have they been brought to the cloud, which brings scale and mobility and security that we never could have on premises, but their superpowers are coming together in these really interesting ways that then empower organizations to tackle every scenario under the sun, from team collaboration to organizational alignment and communications to driving individual productivity and creativity. So the way they've come together, I like to use the metaphor of a tapestry, where each of the capabilities of these services are weaving together into this beautiful new set of experiences.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think one of the things that I took away from the keynote, just kind of watching and putting on my spectator glasses and just watching the keynote happen, is over the last couple of years, the thing that I've noticed is the keynotes themselves are more fluid. It doesn't feel like there's sections, and I think that goes back to what you had said, to where you had these siloed products that had a discrete function. Right? If you needed to work with documents, the solution was SharePoint. If you needed to do email, the solution was Outlook and Exchange. If you needed conversation, it was Skype, or now Teams and now Yammer, and there's just so many ways to collaborate. But they've all kind of found a place together. I think great examples that I saw were live events. It's just a great example of taking tech from across Microsoft, really, and just pulling it into a solution, which is great to see, because everybody's doing great work across the company, but nobody's doing great work by themselves.
Yes, it's amazing, and you know how about how the sausage is being made internally. For those of you who are tuning in, it's really kind of amazing how many One Microsoft efforts there are now, and it's not just a phrase. It actually is teams from across the organization. We're 110,000 employees, thousands and thousands of engineers, contributing to shared repos where design is now more and more consistent with fluid design. Controls are being built, like the OneDrive sharing control that's used across all endpoints. Microsoft Search, which of course more than anyone, is now a shared control and a set of shared capabilities. It's really awesome to see a company this big that has come from such diverse and in some ways siloed backgrounds, including acquisitions like Yammer, to really come together as one company. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I can remember early in my career working in the server and tools business, and what we called it back then, STB, and we were, it almost felt as if we were our own company, not just a business unit, we were just our own company. We were building SQL, we were building Windows, we were building so many different things, but we were building them in a silo.
They were siloed in a silo.
They were siloed in a silo. So it's great to see, everything come together. One of the big announcements, and I shouldn't say one of the big announcements, because I could say that 452 times across the keynote. There were so many big announcements, but one that really stood out for me in particular is, and it kind of created the aha moment that I saw in the audience, which is there is no reason to not build your intranet on SharePoint.
Yes,
in
that's
Microsoft
right.
365. And one of the things that they saw that kind of lended to that was home sites.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about home sites, exactly what they are. Are they new site templates?
Yeah, great question. So home sites are a new experience built with everything you already know and love about SharePoint. So a home site is a personalized landing page for the organization. So you can think of it as your home page, your intranet portal, if you're using older tech terminology. It's that place where people can go and instantly find out what's important to them from the organization, and find what's important for them. What's the work that they need to get back on top of? What are the conversations that they can contribute to? And it is built on all of the existing tech. So home sites are a communication site with superpowers.
Right.
And I'll show you. And it's, maybe we should just cut into demo, and I can
because I was going to
step through.
Because I was going to ask you. Home sites. What we saw on stage was obviously beautiful.
Yep.
How many developers and designers did it take to build that home site?
I think we had one who was designing it, and we used the phrase on stage, building a landing in minutes, not months. That's actually kind of true. I mean, we could, if we wanted to, build the site in minutes. The stuff that takes time is populating content, which happens over time as the organization has news, as events are published. That kind of content is sort of part of the normal day-to-day of a business. But the creation of the site is truly in minutes.
So a home site's truly organic then. It grows over time because of content.
Yeah, the content changes over time. Yeah, generally home sites are a pretty intentional project, as you know, and so the layout and the decision about what the priorities of the organization need to be reflected in the layout and the order of components. But the content that surfaces in those components is going to be very dynamic, which is different than in the past. For a lot of companies, the intranet was, first of all, not considered something you could build in minutes, not something that was very cheap, and then often became stagnant because in order to update content, I have one customer I'm working with right now where it requires an act of Congress to update a news article, and that then doesn't make the internet very valuable. And so it's a vicious cycle where people stop coming because there's no valuable content. And so we built home sites to be dynamic, pulling content from across the organization that's already being generated in the course of business, and getting it to the right people at the right time.
Can you show us one?
I'll show you one for sure. So let's dive in. So what we're looking at here is a SharePoint home site. Again, it is a communication site, and it has some superpowers. The first superpower is a great out-of-box design.
We should put a cape on it.
Yeah, and so let's take a quick look at this design. At the top, we see integration with Microsoft Search, which has been moved to the suite bar throughout Office 365. So with one click, I can instantly start getting recommendations about what's important to me in my organization, and of course, I can start doing queries for whatever I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for information on SharePoint, I can start searching. Then going down a little bit further, we've got the mega menu, which we have recently shipped, that allows me to find sites from across the organization, gives me what we technically call wayfinding, but mere mortals like me call it navigation. And then we have a big, beautiful web part that is showcasing news from the organization to me in a nice carousel experience. And this news is targeted to me based on my roles, my groups, my memberships in the organization. So what I see and what you see might be different from each other. Going down and going down just a little bit further, we see some additional news showing up with a slightly different layout to make it a little bit more dense. And you'll notice two of those news articles are visually flagged. The one from Leadership Connection and the one from News at Contoso. Organizations can now specify certain site collections are organizational news sources. And then when news is published to those sites and they surface in experiences like this, they're visually flagged so that I can see that this is an important, authoritative, official piece of news.
That's really cool. And the irony that I'll point out before you continue is that it's warmer in Redmond right now than it is in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
That is.
Yeah, the biggest news from Vegas right now is our SharePoint Conference party with the Gin Blossoms tonight is actually having to move indoors. I've never had to move a party indoors in Vegas before.
That is...
It's kind of crazy. But yeah, but what you're pointing out there, Bill, the weather web part and the world clock web parts that are in the right, this right rail is new too. This is a vertical section. Again, when it ships, it's going to ship to all communication sites, but it's part of the out-of-box design for home sites. And the right rail is by default set up with web parts that are really individual focused. So it's weather, time, my recent documents, my frequent sites, recommendations of content, my team calendar. So we've sort of got this really nice division of labor between the main part of the page that is what's for me from the organization, and the right rail, which is what's about me. It's really
That's really cool.
Yeah. So let's go down a little bit further. Below the news, we see some recommended viewing, again curated by our comms team to target the right video and news to me. Actually, I'm lying. I'm looking too fast. The recommended viewing here is actually a stream channel showing me videos surfaced by AI. And so this is an integration, an out-of-box integration with Microsoft Stream. Going down a little further, we start getting into what you might think of as the engagement section of the experience, where we're seeing what's happening out on the Twitter feed, and then we've got what the Yammer conversation surfacing in the brand new Yammer Conversations web part, so that we're bringing in conversation from across the organization that is both interesting to me and conversation that I might be able to contribute to.
That's really clean.
Yeah, super duper clean. And then at the bottom, nice big bold beautiful images with links to communities across the organization, and then a footer, again, totally customizable. So the first superpower of home sites is just this great design.
Right.
And as home sites ship, all of the parts that make up this design will be available to you to use on any communication site. So whether you used our out-of-box design as it is, whether you took it and modified it, or whether you just used the parts in some other communication site, you could build a really beautiful, compelling, and engaging experience.
Yeah, that's really nice. It's clean.
Yep.
The elements flow well together. So you've got a Twitter feed and a Yammer conversation part sitting right next to each other. But if you look at them stylistically, they look very similar. They both have a very nice, clean appearance. It's not clunky. It's not that visible embed. That a traditional web part from 2010.
Yeah, where you'd have the iframe with all the scroll bars. And,
right.
Yep.
So it's really clean in the way that we're able to present those, and the news itself, being able to consume news from across the organization, place it in a carousel. So it doesn't look like you cobbled together a wiki and tried to just shove it inside of an internet and hope for the best. So superpower number one, I am totally a fan of.
Superpower number two, we kind of tipped our hat to, which is the organizational news. So the home site itself is by default tagged or specified as an organizational news site. So if a corporate communications person were to publish news to this site, it would also be flagged as organizational news.
Great.
And of course, you can do that to any other comm site as well. Third superpower is the fact that it has enterprise search available, and that of course applies to any communication site. Once Microsoft Search ships, will be scoped to the enterprise. I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yes, it will.
And then there's two additional superpowers that are truly only for the home site. So far everything we've talked about you could do on any communication site, but there are in fact two things that become special about a home site. The first is integration with the SharePoint Start page. So the SharePoint Start page is what we've had for a long time in the waffle of Office 365. In fact, we used to call it the SharePoint Home, but now that we have home sites, it gets a little confusing. So we're calling it the SharePoint Start page. But rather than make you go to the waffle for that, we actually have a link in the default design. It happens to be called My SharePoint. So My SharePoint takes you to the SharePoint Start page, which we first of all have changed the design of. We've added additional functionality to make it a site where you can go, a page where you can go to find news that's for you, to find links to sites that you visit or that your organization thinks is important, to get your recent documents, and to find your files and news that you've saved for later. Yeah, but you're right. We've come a long way. Just to round out the discussion of home sites and their superpowers, since the restart will take a moment, we talked about there's 5 superpowers. The first is a great design. Second is integration with search. Third is organizational news by default, and all 3 of those can be a set of any communication site. Two reserved superpowers. The first is the integration with SharePoint Start Page, which once we restart, hopefully we'll see. Only one home site can give you that integration where you have a link from the home site to the SharePoint Start Page that brings your corporate branding and navigation with you. So it feels like a seamless transition between your organizational portal and your personal page that is powered as the SharePoint Start Page.
So a home site's one per tenant?
Right now, one per tenant. That is what we're shipping initially, but we certainly understand that many organizations might want more than one home site. And for example, Microsoft, we have LinkedIn employees who probably would want to have their own branded home site as their start. And again, we could build it today with the first three superpowers. You just wouldn't be able to integrate it with the SharePoint Start Page. And then the last superpower is some of what we call technically special affordances, which means the home site is going to be the target for certain user experiences, like the homepage on your mobile device. And yay, it's coming back up. So we're going to be able to get this rolling. Let's get a browser going here.
So can the home site be the root site?
Yeah, so that's actually another question. As soon as we get through this rough bit of demo, I can show you that part. All right, let me make sure I'm on. Okay, I'm gonna get Christina logged in here, and then in a separate browser. By the way, I'm now using Edge Developer Edition, which some people call Edgeium, Edge Chromium. I'm using that as my browser every single day, and it is freaking great. I am so happy with it.
It is. I'm running Edge Canary on my Mac.
Oh wow, you're already on Mac.
And it has been great.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're ready to switch back to our demo device. So it's still getting online. It was a little bit faster, I apologize, but it's coming. So this is the new SharePoint Start Page. Now you might remember the SharePoint Home, as we called it, had a left rail navigation and then had some of this type of thing in the middle. Now it's all one giant, great, beautiful page. So it's showing me news that's relevant to me, and then scrolling down a little bit further, there's site navigation across sites I visit frequently that I'm following, recent or suggested from AI. And then further down, featured links, which are being brought to me by my organization, recent documents, and things I've saved for later. And you'll notice here, if you remember from 5 minutes ago when we were online, the branding and the navigation are the same. So as I go back and forth here, I have a common experience between what's happening on my intranet homepage. Let's jump there. And so there's that homepage we were on. And then bouncing back to the SharePoint Start Page from the My SharePoint link, which, by the way, this link can be totally renamed. We expect a lot of organizations are going to give it a very personal and branded name, and you can even remove the link if you want. And then we were talking about special affordances, and one of the special affordances that's a superpower of home sites is that from anywhere in Office 365, I can get to this homepage by clicking my company branding in the upper left corner. So if I, for example, let's go out to a completely different experience like Outlook. I could be reading my mail in Outlook, and if I want to go back and check in with my organization, find out what's new from Outlook, I can click that Contoso Electronics brand in this case, and get back to my landing experience.
You know, and that's something unique that you could attribute to the cloud unto itself, because if you think about it, in the past, you had Exchange, you had SharePoint, you probably had Skype, so you had a variety of different things that you were using to operate your business. But each one, the only one that really afforded branding was really SharePoint.
Right.
And then as you worked your way across your application stack, you ended up with all these context switches. That felt really natural. You brought that Contoso Electronics brand with you from SharePoint to Outlook, and then back to SharePoint again. And my SharePoint's really compelling as well, because it truly is my SharePoint. It's not everybody's SharePoint, because it's personalized to you.
Yep, exactly. Exactly, which is very cool. And now, at the risk of having tried to move this a little too fast, I've also tried to bring up my mobile device. So let me show you just how well this translates to mobile. One of the great things about what we built in SharePoint for the last 3 years is that every SharePoint page and communication site is natively mobile. So you don't have to do any work to make it look great in a mobile browser or in the SharePoint mobile app. And of course, we've also taken care of accessibility as well to make sure that all of these designs and content is accessible and inclusive as possible. So let's jump over to my mobile device. Let's see if I can mirror successfully here. It's looking good. And so this is the SharePoint mobile application. We announced back at Ignite that we had a new design for the application that really puts search front and center. So when I open the app, it starts me in the Find tab, which is a great experience for Microsoft Search. But you'll notice in the upper right corner, there's a new icon. There's a home icon.
Yeah.
Guess where that goes? That's going to take me in one tap to my branded and personalized intranet experience. And this is running a little slow because it's running through my laptop out through the Wi-Fi, which we've already learned is slow. And so again, we've got a beautiful home site experience that you can build with any communication site that integrates with SharePoint Home, and that when you are on Wi-Fi successfully translates out onto mobile.
So the statement that I heard in the keynote is true. There's no reason not to build your intranet on SharePoint anymore.
No, absolutely. In fact, I was getting a message to go jump with another customer who is working with SharePoint Modern, in fact. These days, any company can create a beautiful intranet with communication sites that share knowledge and expertise and vision and resources and news that then can roll up to a hero experience like a home site.
Well, with that said, Dan, I'm going to let you get to your customer meeting to talk about the SharePoint intranet. I'm actually going to step away for a session to talk about Microsoft Search, both of which are now very related to one another. So we'll both go on those. Jeff will be joining us shortly with more of our presenters live from here at the SharePoint Conference in Las Vegas. Until next time, we'll see you again.
May the Wi-Fi be with you.